wanted the Lift project to be effectively a way for me to express what music does to me when I hear sounds or see things that kind of like they reach a part of your soul that there's no explanation to it. It's an immeasurable thing, and I'm really lucky that I can experience that. A lot of people go through life and they never actually are able to feel that thing, and I think as like creatives or artists, we really take that for granted, that we get to feel that thing, and that's something that I want to try and consolidate in some form of art with Lift. The record's been kind of like sculpted over a long period of time. I mean, effectively a lot of the inspiration and the ideas that I've had have been gathered over my whole life, really. I mean, a lot of the things that I'm trying to express sonically have come from, images or experiences or trauma or things that have happened a long time ago, but I've only really now managed to kind of consolidate that and put that into something that I can box up as a neat package, I suppose. And that includes things that are, the most amazing experiences that humans can have, to the most traumatic, terrifying sort of places you can be as a human as well. And I love that art allows you to express all of those things. There's not a lot of avenues in life where you can put all of those things onto a palette, so to speak. There's not a lot of ways that you can kind of make that something that people can see, feel, hear and touch. To kind of like create those sounds and to kind of evoke those sort of feelings, I've tried to challenge traditional songwriting methods and get away from ideologies about melody and rhythm and structure and harmony. I am a music lecturer as like a main job. I lecture composition and songwriting and elements of production, so I understand music. It's not that this is an attempt to stab in the dark and hope something sounds good. I've intentionally, really laboriously tried to make something that sounds unique and generate these sorts of feelings in a non-traditional way. So that's the kind of background of the whole idea of the sonic aspect to this record. So when looking at the collaborators for this project, I really wanted to think about who I could not do it without, and there's some people that were like prerequisites that I definitely needed on it, in terms of I've been like trying to get them in a project for years, or there's just not been like a right sort of time for it. One of those people is Ian McLeod, but I've decided to work with him because he's been in like every project literally since I was 18. I met him when I was 18 in a band, and he's been one of my best friends ever since.
Yeah, my thoughts on the project at first were, I was super excited as soon as I first heard about it. Everything that Dan does, I think he is very focused and has a clear idea of what he wants from whatever he's doing. And I knew that, Dan's not the kind of person who's going to put something out that he doesn't believe in, or that is kind of subpar or not up to the standard that it should be. So I was super excited to hear all the stuff, and then when I did, it was like, yeah, this is going to be cool. I think it's a really unique project, and it's definitely something that I really wanted to be a part of.
I knew this would be a thing that I really needed him involved in. And so his role was kind of like broader mixing and kind of additional production.
So because Dan and I have worked together for so long, I feel like I kind of know how his songwriting style tends to be for the most part, but this is by far the most kind of complete thing that I've heard him write. So I've heard him generally kind of write lots of bits and pieces here and there, but in terms of writing sort of complete songs, I think I was really impressed with the songwriting aspect of this more than anything else. I think just the flow of all the songs and how everything kind of links up into the next part, and it's a really busy record at times. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I think the way that he managed to bring all these different elements together in a way that feels natural is super impressive.
And so I've written and composed and produced the whole record, and once I was getting the mixes to a point I was happy with, then I could send them to Ian for a bit of a broader sort of approach to that. He's a professional audio engineer, and he does some incredible work for like broader sort of commercial sound production for media. So he knew that I knew he could get that really soundscapey, cinematic sort of like mix and master that I needed this record to have. So that's why I kind of got him involved, and he's added something that I could never have added to the record without him. So it's been really great to like really explore the depths of that.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting creative process for me, and it's quite different from how I usually approach mixing a record, in the way that a lot of the time when I'm mixing something, you kind of get the stems from the people, and then you basically just start your mix from there and work from the ground up. Dan already had a very clear idea of what he wanted when he was making this record, so whenever he sent me something, he would send me the session and then all the stems as well as sometimes like a 3-page document of mix notes, which is, for me, super helpful because it means that I'm not trying to guess what he wants, and I have a very clear idea of what he's looking for, but not only what he's looking for, but why he wants that as well. So he would say, this is what I need, and this is why I need it. So if you can make that happen, that would be great.
And he's like in my musical mind. I think there's something that really special that happens with musicians when they have this like synergy and like telekinesis, where you don't really actually have to say the thing that you want to happen. Someone can just like pick up on that.
But at the same time, he gave me a lot of kind of creative freedom to try things out and experiment with stuff as well. So it was a really exciting kind of project for that reason, because it was like I knew kind of what my end goal was, but then also there's a bit of kind of freedom to play around with different sounds and things in there as well.
And I've been so lucky with this project that everyone that I've brought into it has that same sort of ethos and mindset and goal that I have. And so those moments of like telekinesis I've had with everyone involved, from photography, sound design to the drummers involved, the additional sort of collaborators, and that was something that I was really desperate to kind of have, and it's really happened organically, which is really special, I think.
Let's put aside all it is self-led.
And then when I was looking at the ways to kind of enhance the music that I had written, I also kind of wanted to involve someone whose music I adored, that I could maybe have an attempt at adding my spin onto. And so this is where I finally managed to get Finn Lamarnell involved. And much like Ian, I've known Finn for over 10 years. We studied together at university, and I think I must have been 19 maybe when I met him.
I've always really liked the kind of music that Dan's put out through kind of, there's been so many bands like Out of Samsara and Mountains and Oceans, and mainly those two actually. Those are the two ones that I've kind of listened to the most. And yeah, so I was really excited to be involved. As we were speaking about it, he was kind of saying like, this is the first project where I can kind of see you, as in me, fitting into it. So that was cool. So mainly excitement, I would say. Yeah, I was excited to get involved.
And I actually still remember the very first time that I heard him sing and play guitar, and I remember thinking to myself, like, give that guy like 5-6 years and he's going to have something like really truly special. And we actually played in separate bands and did like quite a lot in the music industry at the same time, and I've never had like a suitable time to like make music with him and explore sort of creative ideas. And this was the project. I knew that I could do that because he's been kind of like experimenting with different styles of music over the years. And anyone that knows Finn knows that he's, you know, very, very broad, from like percussive fingerstyle acoustic guitar playing to like hip hop style music to like spoken word poetry and everything in between. He's a real sort of visionary of music.
I think from what Dan was saying, I think this is true probably for everyone, that they're doing, you do a project kind of for yourself, but that seemed to be like really prominent in the ethos. It's like, I want to make something that I really, really like, which I kind of liked and respected. I think that even with, like when I'm writing my own stuff, I'm like, obviously I want to write stuff that I like, but I'm like, I hope everyone else likes it as well. And it's like, you're kind of, you don't kind of go like too experimental or whatever. You kind of give yourself boundaries, even if it's not conscious. And I think like the fact that Dan had kind of like specifically like recognize that and be like, I don't want to do that, and I want to just make something that's satisfies a kind of itch musically.
And so he sent me 2 songs. One's called James that we've taken forward, and the second was this kind of electronic idea that he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do with. But as soon as I heard James, it kind of like really piqued my interest, and there was like a real strange sort of like synergy or synchronicity, I should say, with that, because my twin brother's name is James, and he doesn't know that or didn't know that at the time, and the lyrics of the song are very close to some experiences that me and him have had together. And so it was just one of those like lightning in a bottle moments where I was just like, I can't ignore that. That's like a sign of some description that this is definitely the right thing to be doing. And so I'd spent months chopping up and changing and rearranging and adding components to the song.
What was interesting for me is that, particularly with a song that doesn't really have like a title yet, but James is the kind of working title, like a song that means like a lot to me. And I was saying when Dan sent it back, it was quite emotional for me to like to have someone else put so much care into a song that I'd put a lot of care into as well.
It's been amazing having Finn on board, and laterally there was this second song that he had sent that I'd been really like toying with and battling with for ages and ages, and I'd actually kind of written it off until I'd finished most of the writing. I went back to it and I was effectively stuck with these 2 drum beats that I couldn't really manipulate and turn into what I wanted, and I found myself basically copying or trying to replicate a drum beat from Ian Maciak, who is very, very well known across the world really for his drumming, but famously on the Machine Drum record, A View of You. And basically I was getting so annoyed with this whole process that I'd found his email address and I emailed him the track, and I just told him, listen, I'm basically trying to do something that you would do and I'm doing a terrible job. What do you think about actually just playing on this song? And I didn't expect a response. I actually did it more as a kind of like exorcism of the whole idea. That's it, done. I don't need to kind of go back to it. And he came back to me and said that he really loved the track. And so I was like, oh, amazing, I can actually like bring this track back to life. And so we've had like a really good back and forward about some of the ideas from my initial demo kind of percussion and drum tracks that we want to keep and what not to keep. And so this is kind of like a 3-way collaboration between me, Finn and Ian Maciak.
The other one was more of like a composition. I really like making music for films that don't exist, but like they are basically just like loads of noises, and it's kind of meant for some sort of imagery. And I think Dan has again chopped it up, made it cool, and there's a drummer, Ian, as well, who is going to be adding to that track, so that's really, really exciting. He's going to be adding a kind of breakbeat element to it.
It's been really incredible to have someone of that stature like something that I've been attached to enough to add themselves to it, and again this idea of people that believe in the record and the music enough to want to be involved. And so it's been really, really I guess like it's confirmed a lot about some of the insecurities I had about maybe myself, not the record, but about the quality of what I was putting out that people like Ian and Finn and the other collaborators want to be involved in. And so I knew that Carl Hamilton would be the artist that I wanted to be involved in this. And I've been really lucky. I actually had him involved in another project that I was doing about 5 years ago, where he created essentially a different painting for every song. And it was this kind of story of like a push and pull, Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing. And so we knew that we could work together, and I knew that he could understand my sort of like creative ideas and what I want from from his input, essentially. From the beginning of the project, I had like 2 or 3 very clear sort of visions for separate things. One of those was for the video and one was for the cover artwork that I wanted. But I didn't want to be too limiting at the same time. So I really wanted something that would like represent the minimalism of the record, but also the kind of complexities that are within it as well. And so yeah, from when I began kind of putting together the pieces for this and the kind of sonic ideas, I had this idea of just like a kind of splash of paint with like a brush stroke or a palette stroke through it. And that's kind of what I gave to him. And he generated like, I think 50 plus sort of versions of that. And then me and Calum were kind of like picking through which ones we could use and then kind of develop it from there. But I think he really he understood, like I was saying a little bit earlier, it's like this idea of someone that's like almost like telekinetically understanding what you want to achieve with your art, I think is a really like special thing. And he's managed to do that incredibly well with effectively like a brush stroke or a palette stroke. And you know, I think it really speaks volumes about his ability and his understanding and care for art, that he could do that so delicately with such little physical touch, but with such a broad impact on a project. And so I think that's really added something, again, that I could never have added. I mean, when you break it down to adding, you know, a piece of colour onto a piece of paper, that sounds like quite easy and straightforward. But if you really respect the art form and you want your project to really like breathe as much as it can, you can't really underplay or undervalue that sort of thing. And so I needed Col as the guy that was going to do that. I knew that he would be the one that I needed involved. And so, yeah, then when I was looking at once I'd created all the sort of sonic components to this and I was looking at the broader sort of concept and the design elements, I needed someone involved that understood how musicians and creatives work, but also was good enough at their job to capture all of the things that I needed. And there was, really only one person in my sort of mind that could do that and do it justice and care about it as much as I could, and that's Calum McMillan, that captured all of the kind of the photo assets, the video assets, and the broader sort of design sort of aesthetic.
Typically, musically, I work with bands that are either quite poppy or sound like rage and despair falling down a staircase. So this was a not completely new type of music for me to listen to, but to like create something with. And I was really excited to approach things a bit differently. A lot of those other types of music, it's quite kind of documentary focused. There's not as much kind of concept or metaphor involved. It's more documenting people doing stuff, and this there was a lot more scope to let the sounds and visuals like play together and not be as explicit as they might be in the kind of work that I usually do.
And again, it's involving people that I know can supersede the expectations that I've got and apply something that I could never add, but they can also kind of like read the mind of the sort of creative part of this whole thing, and that's been achieved multiple times throughout the whole process, and that's allowed this other sort of component to happen, because I wanted Lift to be something that encapsulates a lot of parts of the sort of sensory system. I want people to see the kind of video and the photo assets and feel an emotion and something be evoked.
So my creative process for this was largely revolving around taking a bit of a lead from Dan. Dan provided me with quite detailed kind of briefs of the visual kind of ideas and inspirations he had, and then I kind of reverse engineered how I would make those happen from a production standpoint. And then I also sent him back some additional mood boards of things that struck me as being related to the music. And then it was quite a collaborative process with me and Dan. We met up and spent a day and basically just worked our way through a list of assets and things we needed to capture, and it was relatively prescriptive in terms of Dan had a strong idea of the kind of things that he wanted, but he was willing to trust my expertise, for lack of a better term, and how to go about capturing the kind of moods and vibes and results he was after, and I find that quite a rewarding way to work with somebody.
I wanted them to see like the video for the single or the two singles and feel that same thing, to hear that, and all components of this I really just want people to attach a part of themselves to, and ultimately I think, well, I know that Calum has managed to do that, and that was the basis for involving him in this in the first place. The kind of final musical one that I wanted to get involved in was Adam Betts. So I've known Adam kind of very loosely for a couple of years. I used to manage a band that I kind of got him to do a bit of work with, and I mean, the first time I saw him play drums was actually on tour support with like Deftones, and then I saw him again with Dillinger Escape Plan with Three Trapped Tigers. And the first time I saw it, it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe a percussionist and a drummer. It feels quite reductive to say that, because I don't think that he's just that. He's just this incredibly talented, outside of the box musician, all-round artist. And yeah, the first time I saw it, I was just in awe of it. And very luckily, yeah, I sent him the tracks, and he was really into it and really enjoyed the kind of overall kind of sound that I was going for. And I think he clicked with it really quickly, which I was really happy about, because it's quite an exposing thing to do. It's a hard thing to send people that you admire in your chosen field something that you've never shown anyone, because ultimately this is a record that's kind of been just of my mind and in front of me on a screen for the better part of a year. And then to finally send that to people that you hope want to believe in it, it's quite a terrifying sort of process. So yeah, when he came back and he was really into it and wanted to add his spin on it, I was overjoyed. I was so happy that that was the case. And so we sent back a few ideas and what he wanted to do with it, and his sort of take on the way to kind of bring the song a bit more to life. And that's the track Zauer that's going to be the kind of lead single.
The music makes me feel introspective, I would say. I think it's very kind of ambient and experimental, and there's a lot of kind of space in the record for me. I think it makes me, I think it's all about the atmosphere, right? So for me, it kind of takes me into this headspace where I can just kind of sit and immerse myself in this sort of ocean of sound. I think that was what we were going for when we were making this record anyway, for sure. But yeah, it makes me feel kind of introspective and inspired as well. I think there's a lot of really kind of uplifting kind of moments in it as well, and that all comes together to make something that I think sounds really cool and unique.
For the first time in my life, I decided to make a record that replicated the sound that is how I wanted to feel, which was at peace and to have hope and to effectively like lift the way that I was feeling, and that's why the project's called Lift, and ultimately why the album is called There's Beauty in Everything. From the loss that I suffered in the summer, I've been able to really like overcome quite a big barrier in my life with music. I've managed to actually solidify a way of creating music that isn't a representation of how I feel at that moment in time, but how I hope to feel. And I feel like there's a lot of hope in the record. For me anyway, the whole thing is about having some hope and feeling that there's, you know, another way of kind of looking at your life and looking at things, and it's quite introspective and quite expansive for that reason. It really feels to me that there's a way of kind of hearing that record that at least allows you to kind of have space and a little bit of peace, and I think sonically I've captured that with the help of some really amazing collaborators.
Music makes me feel, I guess I'm kind of weird, and I find sad music quite satisfying to listen to. Music that's like full of intense emotions. I guess that's probably a release valve of some sort for me. And the the melancholy and the delicateness and the intricateness of Lift makes me feel happy because it taps into feelings that I'm quite prone to having. And I find that, I guess it's comforting to know when you have the same emotional reaction to a song or a piece of art that you feel the person that's made it also has. It makes you feel like you aren't alone.
I think the record will hold up really well over time because there's so many layers to it, and there's so many. It's really, really varied, and yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that you can't just listen to once and be like, got it, you know, like there's so many. There's really cool people involved as well. You know, Dan is obviously the driving force, but there's like some really cool collaborators and stuff, and you know, Ian's mixing as well is adding like another element to it, and I think yeah, it's got so many layers to it, and listening back is going to be a really great experience because it's going to morph and kind of grow with you over time as you listen to it. I think there's a lot going on in there emotionally, I think, and it kind of unpacks itself.
I feel like this record, for me, is going to hold up pretty well over time. I think part of the reason for that is that it's not trying to be anything. It's not like it was written to fit into a certain genre or to kind of cater to anyone else, really. It's kind of just its own little thing. There's so many different kind of influences, and it was really like, I feel like Dan came at this from the perspective of how can I take all these kind of ideas I've got, but then really make them into this thing that I'm really happy with, and that's kind of it. And I know, for example, when I sent him the first mix, he was like, if everything sounds like this, I don't care if anyone else likes it.
I suspect the Lift will hold up really well. Music that's genuine and isn't chasing a zeitgeist tends to become quite kind of timeless. It's pretty clear that Dan and his collaborators aren't trying to... They're trying to capture like genuine moments and genuine emotions in these songs, not to kind of capture what is going on at the moment. And I suspect, given all the kind of layers and subtlety, and the fact that it is so broad musically, means that there'll be a lot to discover. This isn't... it's not a record for playlists, which I guess means that people might not digest it as much as they would playlists, just because people's listening habits have changed. But I suspect that means that there is more longevity in it because there's more to come back to. People aren't just going to rinse this record and be really into it for like one summer and then never go back to it. So I suspect it's going to hold up really well.
Like, what I want from this record is just for people to like feel something, and I know that sounds like quite a low bar, but it's kind of something that I think people that live their day-to-day life tend to forget. That, you know, I think people are on autopilot so much that it's really easy to forget like a real sort of primal attachment to sounds or art or music. And that was my main goal with this, was to let people kind of have a look into how these things make me feel. So when I see like a painting that like takes my breath away, I want to be able to capture that in a sonic fashion, and I want that sound that I've captured to do the same thing to the listener, but to me primarily. And I think by doing that as honestly and as kind of ruthlessly as I have, in my mind I've made a record that I find interesting and something that is a pathway into something that's got a lot more life to it. So I'm really excited about where Lift can go, but primarily I'm really excited to let people see what I've created. It's the first time in a long time that I've been entirely creatively self-indulgent and been able to just I guess realise the full vision of something that I've been trying to do for a long time. The way that I kind of think about it is, like, if you imagine an oil painter that only has two colours, that's kind of where I've been musically for a little while. And now I think about it as someone who's known the colour spectrum their whole career, but now they have access to all of the colours. That's kind of how this project feels for me. And I feel like I've captured that to the best of my ability, and the people involved in it have really added the the extra sort of components that I think make it more accessible and more kind of, you know, it makes it easier to be attached to with all these other like rich kind of contributions. And yeah, I don't really have any expectations beyond that. If people like it, then that's great. But like I said, my only hope is that people feel something when they hear, see, consume the overall thing. And I've kind of met my bare minimum criteria. I love it and I'm incredibly proud of it. And anything beyond that is a bonus. I'm happy with anything that comes after that.